How far would you go to hide the truth about who you are? When a family vacation becomes the backdrop for forbidden passion, a young stepfather and his daughter's boyfriend cross a line that can never be undone. Lust, betrayal, and deadly secrets collide in this shocking tale of love and loss. What starts with a stolen glance ends with a chilling crime at the bottom of a lake. Get ready for a story that will haunt you long after the final word. Chloe's announcement at the dinner table was unexpected. I want you to meet Ethan, she said with a grin. Her cheeks flushed. My heart raced, though I masked it with a composed smile. I had grown accustomed to hiding my feelings. Being a young stepfather to a grown daughter and a public figure left little room for vulnerability. That Saturday, the doorbell echoed through the house. I adjusted my shirt and followed Chloe to the door. As she swung it open, a man stepped inside. Tall, athletic, with fiery red hair that caught the afternoon sunlight and eyes that seemed to see straight into your soul. Ethan. Hi, Mr. Carter, Ethan said, his hand outstretched. His voice was steady, confident, and laced with warmth. I shook his hand, feeling the strength in his grip. The touch lingered a second too long, and I withdrew, my heart pounding against my rib cage. Throughout the evening, I watched him. He moved with an ease that drew attention effortlessly. Chloe was smitten, her laughter bubbling at everything he said. My wife, Melissa, adored him too, but I couldn't focus on their approval. My mind was consumed with thoughts I knew I shouldn't have. Ethan wasn't just attractive, he was captivating. By the end of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan had noticed my stolen glances. Every time our eyes met, it felt electric. He wasn't oblivious, and that terrified me. The morning after meeting Ethan, I couldn't shake him from my thoughts. His presence lingered like the faint scent of cologne that still clung to the air in the living room. Every detail of him, the way his laughter echoed, how his eyes seemed to glint mischievously under the warm light, was burned into my memory. I woke up restless, torn between guilt and an undeniable pull toward him. These feelings were dangerous, uncharted territory that I had no business exploring. But the harder I tried to suppress them, the stronger they became. Chloe's chatter at breakfast provided a distraction, albeit a temporary one. He's perfect, isn't he? She asked, her cheeks flushed with excitement. I really think he's the one. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Ethan wasn't just some stranger I could admire from afar. He was her boyfriend, someone she envisioned a future with. Yet, as much as I hated myself for it, the idea of keeping my distance seemed impossible. Over coffee, Melissa, my wife, brought up the upcoming trip to the lakehouse. It'll be nice to get away from the city for a bit, she said, glancing at me over her cup. We should invite Ethan. It'll give him a chance to bond with the family. My heart skipped a beat. The idea of spending more time with Ethan, away from prying eyes, was as thrilling as it was terrifying. That's a great idea, I replied, keeping my tone casual. Chloe, why don't you ask him to join us? Her face lit up. Really? He'd love that. She pulled out her phone immediately, texting him with an enthusiasm that made my stomach churn. Within minutes, she announced that he was in. He said yes, she beamed. He's so excited to come. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. This was my chance to get closer to Ethan, to figure out what these feelings meant. But it was also a dangerous gamble. The lake house was secluded, a place where secrets could thrive or unravel. I told myself that my intentions were innocent, that I simply wanted to know him better for Chloe's sake. But deep down, I knew better. The days leading up to the trip were a blur of anticipation and anxiety. I busied myself with preparations, ensuring everything was perfect. When the day finally arrived, Ethan arrived at our house early, suitcase in hand. He was dressed casually in a fitted t-shirt and jeans, but even in his simplicity, he exuded an effortless charm that made my pulse quicken. The drive to the lake house was uneventful, though every stolen glance at Ethan in the rearview mirror felt like a silent confession. He was animated, sharing stories with Chloe and Melissa, his laughter filling the car. I found myself drawn to his voice, the way it resonated with warmth and confidence. It was both soothing and unsettling. When we arrived, the sight of the lake took my breath away, as it always did. The water was calm, its surface reflecting the sky like a mirror. The cabin, nestled among towering pines, exuded a sense of serenity. It was the perfect escape, or so it seemed. As we unpacked, Ethan offered to help me carry some of the heavier items. "You've got quite the setup here," he remarked as we lugged a cooler into the kitchen. His tone was casual, but the way his eyes met mine felt deliberate, as if testing the waters of something unspoken. "Thanks," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's our little getaway spot." Throughout the day, I found myself gravitating toward him under the guise of familial bonding. I asked him about his interests, his job, his plans for the future. He spoke with a confidence that was magnetic, and I hung onto his every word. It wasn't just his appearance that drew me in. It was his essence, the way he seemed so comfortable in his own skin. At dinner that evening, the atmosphere was light and cheerful. Melissa and Chloe took turns teasing Ethan about his apparent lack of cooking skills, while he laughed it off with good-natured charm. I watched him closely, the way he interacted with everyone, the way he carried himself. He caught my gaze more than once, his blue eyes locking onto mine for a beat longer than necessary. Each time, my heart raced, and I wondered if he could sense the storm brewing inside me. After dinner, as we sat around the fire pit, Chloe excused herself to grab something from the cabin. Melissa followed, leaving Ethan and me alone under the canopy of stars. The crackle of the fire filled the silence between us, and for a moment, I felt exposed, as if he could see right through me. "You've got a great family," Ethan said, breaking the silence. His voice was sincere, but there was a hint of something else, an undertone I couldn't quite place. "Thanks," I replied, my throat dry. "And Chloe? She's lucky to have someone like you." He smiled, a soft, almost shy expression that caught me off guard. "I'm the lucky one," he said, but his eyes lingered on mine as he spoke. The air between us felt charged, and I wondered if I was imagining things or if he felt it too. The moment passed as quickly as it came, but it left me reeling. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop replaying the day's interactions. Every glance, every word seemed laden with meaning. The lake house, with its tranquility and isolation, was supposed to be a retreat. But for me, it was becoming a battleground, a place where I was forced to confront desires I'd long buried. And with Ethan so close, I wasn't sure I could win the fight. The next morning, I woke before anyone else. The lake was shrouded in mist, the stillness broken only by the occasional chirping of birds. I stepped onto the porch with a cup of coffee, hoping the crisp air would help clear my thoughts. Instead, The image of Ethan's easy smile and piercing blue eyes lingered in my mind, refusing to be dismissed. I wasn't alone for long. Ethan emerged from the cabin, barefoot and shirtless, his athletic frame illuminated by the soft morning light. "Morning," he said, his voice carrying a relaxed warmth. He stretched lazily, and my eyes betrayed me, lingering a moment too long. "Morning," I replied, forcing a calm demeanor. "Up early?" "Couldn't sleep," he admitted, sitting down in the chair beside mine. He held his coffee like it was an extension of himself, effortless and unguarded. "This place is incredible. Peaceful." "It is," I agreed, my voice tight. I tried to focus on the lake, but his presence was magnetic. Even in the quiet, I could feel the weight of his gaze. It was unsettling and intoxicating all at once. The others joined us soon after, and the moment dissolved into the hum of casual conversations and plans for the day. But that brief morning interaction clung to me, a small seed of something forbidden taking root. By the time evening came, I couldn't shake the feeling that this trip to the lake was destined to be more than just a family getaway. It was becoming a storm I wasn't sure I could weather. By the third day, the weight of my emotions was becoming unbearable. Every interaction with Ethan felt like walking a tightrope, teetering between longing and restraint. That morning, as the family prepared breakfast, I approached him casually. "Hey, what do you say we take the boat out later, do a little fishing?" Ethan's expression brightened. "Fishing, huh? It's been a while, but I'm game." I tried to keep my tone light, masking the storm raging inside. "Great, it's peaceful out there. Good way to clear your head." When the time came, we carried the rods and tackle box to the dock. As we rode into the open water, the cabin grew smaller in the distance. The stillness of the lake surrounded us, amplifying every sound. The creak of the boat, the splash of oars, the faint rustle of the trees. We cast our lines in silence, the air heavy with unspoken words. Ethan seemed relaxed, but I was anything but. My heart pounded, not from the excitement of fishing, but from being alone with him, surrounded by nothing but water. "So, Nate," Ethan said suddenly, breaking the quiet, "what's on your mind? You've been different this trip." "Different?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Yeah," he said, his tone casual but his gaze piercing. "Like you're carrying something heavy. You can talk to me, you know." His words felt like an invitation, but also a trap. My hand tightened around the fishing rod. "I'm just thinking about life," I said vaguely. "Responsibilities, family, the usual." Ethan nodded but didn't look away. "Fair enough. But sometimes it helps to be honest with yourself." The line between us had been thinning, and in that moment, it snapped. I set my rod aside, turning to face him fully. "Ethan, The words caught in my throat. He was staring at me, his eyes searching, as if daring me to say more. And then it happened. I leaned forward, closing the space between us. Our lips met, tentative at first, then deeper. It was electric, a rush of emotions I had buried for so long finally unleashed. But just as quickly as it began, Ethan pulled back. "Nate," he said, his voice shaking, "we can't do this. Chloe, I can't do this to her." The guilt in his voice was like a dagger. "Ethan, I started, but he shook his head. "This isn't right," he said firmly. "I need to tell her. She deserves to know." Panic set in. The life I had so carefully built was on the verge of collapse, and the man who had ignited this fire within me was now threatening to expose it. "Ethan, wait," I said, reaching for his arm as he stood. The boat wobbled beneath us, but I didn't care. Please, just think about what you're saying. He looked down at me, his face a mix of anger and regret. I've already thought about it, Nate. I can't keep this a secret. Desperation clawed at my chest. You don't have to do this. We can move on. Forget it happened. I can't, he said firmly. I won't live a lie. In that moment, something inside me snapped. As he turned to step away, I grabbed him. The struggle was brief but chaotic. The boat rocked violently, and in a flash, Ethan lost his balance, tumbling into the water. Ethan, I shouted, panic overtaking me as he thrashed in the water. His strong arms fought against the waves, but the panic in his eyes told me he couldn't swim. I leaned over the edge, reaching out. For a moment, I considered helping him, but then the gravity of what he might do, what he might say, washed over me. If Ethan made it back, everything would fall apart. The struggle in his eyes turned to terror, then silence as the water consumed him. I sat frozen, watching as the ripples slowly faded into stillness. My chest heaved, but my mind was eerily calm. It was over. I sat in the boat, staring at the still water where Ethan had disappeared. The lake was eerily quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. My heart pounded, each beat a deafening reminder of what had just happened. My hands trembled as I gripped the edges of the boat, my mind racing through 1,000 conflicting thoughts. What had I done? Could I undo it? Number. There was no going back now. I forced myself to breathe, each inhale shaky and shallow. The weight of my actions settled over me like a leaden cloak. I needed to think, to act quickly. Slowly, I picked up the oars and began to row back to shore. The rhythmic splash of the oars against the water was the only sound, but it wasn't soothing. Each stroke felt like I was digging deeper into a grave I'd just created. When I reached the dock, I took a moment to steady myself. My legs felt weak as I stepped out of the boat, my shoes slipping slightly on the damp wood. I glanced around. The cabin was still quiet, no sign of Chloe or Melissa. Relief flooded me. They hadn't noticed I was gone. I pulled the boat ashore and began unloading the gear, my movements mechanical. As I placed the fishing rods back into the shed, my mind raced through what I would say. Ethan was gone. He'd drowned. It was a tragic accident. But would they believe me? Would Chloe see through the cracks in my story? As I entered the cabin, Chloe's voice greeted me, cheerful and oblivious. Hey, Dad, how was fishing? Did you guys catch anything? I froze in the doorway, the question hanging in the air. No, I said, my voice strained. We didn't have much luck. She frowned. Where's Ethan? Still out there? I hesitated, the lie forming on my tongue. We got separated, I said carefully. He wanted to try a spot farther out, but I wasn't feeling great, so I came back early. Her expression shifted to mild concern. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I said quickly, brushing past her. Just need some water. I moved to the kitchen, my back to her as I poured a glass. My hand shook slightly and I clenched it into a fist to steady it. Every second felt like an eternity, waiting for her to ask another question, to press further. But she didn't. She seemed satisfied with my answer for now. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Chloe and Melissa busied themselves with plans for a late afternoon hike, giving me some much-needed space. I pretended to rest in my room, but my thoughts were anything but restful. Images of Ethan kept flashing through my mind. His smile, his laugh, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about his dreams. And then the fear in those same eyes as the lake swallowed him. By evening, my nerves were fraying. Chloe's voice called out from the living room. "Ethan's still not back. Should we be worried?" I stepped out, forcing a calm demeanor. "He probably lost track of time," I said. "But just to be safe, I'll go check near the dock." Melissa looked up from her book, her brow furrowing. "Do you think he's okay? He's not familiar with the area." "He'll be fine," I assured her, though my stomach churned with dread. As I walked back to the dock, the weight of what I'd done threatened to crush me. I stared out at the darkening lake, the water now reflecting the fiery hues of the setting sun. My chest tightened. How long before they started asking real questions? Before they realized Ethan wasn't coming back? I leaned against the edge of the dock, my thoughts spiraling. If his body resurfaced, it would all be over. They'd find out what really happened. I'd lose everything. My family, my reputation, my freedom. The thought of facing Chloe, of watching her grief turn into hatred, was unbearable. A splash startled me, and I whipped around, my heart hammering. It was just a fish breaking the surface, but the sound sent a jolt of fear through me. My paranoia was growing, feeding on every creak and ripple around me. When I returned to the cabin, Chloe and Melissa were already discussing their concerns. "We should call someone," Chloe said, her voice tinged with worry. "What if he's hurt?" Melissa nodded. "It's not like him to just disappear. Maybe the park rangers—" I cut her off. "Let's not jump to conclusions," I said firmly. "Give him a little more time. If he's not back by morning, we'll call for help." Chloe hesitated, then reluctantly agreed. But her worry was evident, and it clawed at my conscience. She trusted me, and I was betraying her in the worst way imaginable. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was silent, but my mind was loud with guilt and fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside felt like an accusation. I kept imagining Ethan's face, his voice, the way he said Chloe deserved the truth. He was right, but now it was too late. As the hours dragged on, a new fear crept in. What if Ethan hadn't drowned? What if he made it to shore somewhere else? What if he was out there, alive, waiting for the right moment to come back and expose everything? The thought was both terrifying and absurd, but it wouldn't leave me. I glanced at the clock. It was past midnight, but sleep wouldn't come. I got up and walked to the window, staring out at the dark, still lake. It felt like it was staring back at me, holding my secret beneath its surface. For now. This story takes us on a journey through the limits of desire, the weight of our choices, and the darkness that fear and guilt can bring. Following Nate's path, we witness how an apparently perfect life can crumble when repressed feelings and forbidden impulses collide. The lake, calm on the surface, mirrors Nate's troubled mind, holding a secret he can never escape. This narrative isn't just about what happened between Nate and Ethan. It's about the extremes we're willing to go to protect what we're afraid to lose. It's a story of passion, regret, and, above all, the price of carrying a truth that can never be spoken. The ending is bittersweet, a stark reminder that impulsive actions can lead to irreversible consequences. Now, I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Leave your rating from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback is so important because it helps me create even better stories for you. Did you like the ending? Was it impactful, or were you expecting something different? I want to know everything. And if you have a story, emotional, shocking, or inspiring, that you'd like to see turned into a video? Write it in the comments. Who knows? Your story might be featured on the channel in the coming days. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. See you next time.